Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to your show, Coffee with Experts. This is your host, Ranmay here. And today we have Catherine Bevan, who is the head of SEO at Sleeping Giant Media with us. Hey, Catherine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Lovely. Catherine, before we move any forward and, speak about SEO and pick your brains, why don't you talk us through your journey thus far, how you landed up in digital marketing and what Sleeping Giant Media is all about, how you guys different from all the agencies out there, whatever core services, and then we can take it forward from there on.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Okay, so Sleeping Giant Media, we are a digital marketing agency based in Kent in the UK, and we deliver SEO, PPC, social, data, and content marketing for a wide range of clients across the UK and further afield as well. Our aim is essentially to deliver outstanding results for our clients through a collaborative and insight approach to digital marketing. So we set ourselves apart in that we have our own internal data team who deliver this insights-led approach to digital. And we also focus on educating our clients as well through this collaborative approach where we look to upskill teams and really get the best results for their digital.
From having a history degree, landing up in the world of SEO, how did
Yeah,
that
so
happen?
I guess I fell into a career in SEO and digital as a whole really by chance. As you say, studied for a history degree. That kind of came out of a decision. I'd reached the end of school studies, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I'd enjoyed that subject at school, so figured I should probably go and do something with my time. Then I graduated from uni, still didn't really know what I wanted to do. And by chance, I came across this entry level role, which was advertised at Sleeping Giant Media, which is obviously the agency where I still work now, almost 11 years later. Conveniently also happened to be located in my hometown, so it felt like things had fallen into place. But I'd never heard of SEO or PPC at the time, so did a bit of
Mhm.
research before applying for that role. I think actually I may have read even some of the Moz Beginner's Guide to SEO or something along those lines, and I thought, wow, this sounds so interesting. Definitely could see myself doing something like this. So I was lucky
Mhm.
enough to start in that entry level role, which was more of a generalist search marketing role covering all aspects of digital. So I did a bit of SEO then, a bit of PPC, some other paid channels as well, which I think gave me the opportunity to get a good grounding into digital as a whole, which I think it really helps to have that sort of holistic understanding of how all of the channels work together. And I think actually agency life can be a great starting point as well when you're brand new to digital. Obviously, provided you've got the training and the structure there in the agency to support your learning, I think it's a brilliant place to learn because you get exposure to so many different clients and accounts so quickly. Yeah, I was really grateful really for those early opportunities to work on a wide range of sites in different industries. I feel like I learned so fast as a result of that. I guess from that role, I then progressed through various account management roles, again, doing a bit
Mhm.
more sort of holistic digital before then. A few years ago, decided to specialize in SEO. I think SEO for me, it was always where my strongest passion lay in digital because I think I love that it's both technical but can also be creative. And I think it's not as black and white as PPC can be, and that you can't just
Yeah.
turn on your traffic in the same way that you can turn on a paid campaign. It requires that more bespoke problem solving testing approach to really figure out what's going to work well for that site. And I think as well, where the landscape with SEO is constantly changing as Google roll out different algorithm updates, it really does require you to be agile and continue learning as you go, which I think I really enjoy. So yeah, I'm now head of SEO, lead our SEO team of 11. We've got a wide portfolio of clients in our remit, some local SEO, some national, some international as well, which makes it
Mhm.
quite broad and varied on a day-to-day basis. Certainly keeps things interesting anyway.
Lovely, quite a journey, I must say,
Yeah.
from not knowing anything about SEO to now, to in your current role as the head of SEO. So, in your current role, and in fact, it has been a journey, like you mentioned, 11 long years. So, as the current head of SEO at Sleeping Giant Media, what advanced metrics, methods do you find effective for assessing the impact of experimental changes on organic search performance, especially in large scale SEO project, like you mentioned, national and international?
Yeah, so I think firstly, I'm just a big advocate of testing in general for SEO. I think that in SEO theory is one thing, but actually practical testing is really key because especially when it comes to the advancements, changes, testing, experimenting, learning is key because sometimes even what Google says isn't actually what you find works when you're testing things.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to make sure you're critically assessing that with your own testing. When it comes to metrics or measurement, I think it's really important to have a robust plan for reporting in place before you really get started with any sort of SEO campaign or tests. So even more important as well, if you're going to be doing regular testing or experiments. So I mentioned at the beginning, we've got our in-house data and insights function at Seeking Giant Media. So ideally, the way we start every client relationship involves some sort of level of like measurement planning to understand what metrics and KPIs we should be tracking, which needs to really be bespoke for that client. And we also try to make sure that those are like setting measurable targets and ensuring we've got the right tracking solutions and reports in place to be able to surface the insight effectively when we're doing that testing. And I think that's especially important as well when working with those large scale websites, is because often they're going to be the clients that are investing those larger budgets. They're going to be looking for more in-depth reporting than just your standard analytics reports. But also, actually, I do think sometimes just having the basics in place can really help. So we use Google Search Console quite a lot, really powerful tool, obviously free to use. And also in combination with another tool we started using earlier in the year called SEO testing, which works in combination with Search Console to help you surface some of those insights. So I think when it comes to setting up tests, you can then use that to easily review the data for your control versus test, which can also be really handy if you're needing to quickly like report on metrics, for example, for clients. So yeah, I would say those things. So having that kind of advanced tracking in place, but also just sometimes the basics are fine too.
Lovely. And I understand that you are into SEO. And in fact, I know the answer to this, but still asking, what is your take on SEO versus PPC?
I think both are important. I think both have different roles to play when it comes to a holistic strategy. And I think
Mhm.
it really depends on the client in terms of what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve, as to which channel works best for which things, if that makes sense.
Come on, you should have just said, forget PPC, come and do SEO with us. You
Yeah,
can.
I should have said that, but no, I do think both definitely have their place. And actually, one of the
Yeah,
things
yeah.
we really try to do in our teams is to make sure we are working closely together. Our
Mhm,
strategic account managers, their role is to tie up all of the different channels and make sure that whatever the client's goals are, we're doing the right things across whichever channel that might be. So we might pull in a bit of SEO, a bit of PPC here and there, depending on what the goals are. Because ultimately, we're trying to get the clients more money. So we're going to use the
mhm.
best combination of channels to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. It can. It depends a lot on the current status, online presence of the client, the
Yeah.
budgets, and in fact, in projects wherein they have a lot of budget or national or international presence, like you're referring to, it is a mixed bag of both SEO and PPC to get them immediate results, and also be on top of on their SEO game to have that long-term effect on their branding. So I can completely relate to that. Yeah. SEO, and Catherine, you would know more about this, right? As a nuanced field where mistakes can happen, like you were talking about. Even if Google is saying something, follow every bit of what Google is saying, then also you might end up not seeing the results
Mhm.
which you want to eventually. So, what do you feel are some of the or what some of the common SEO mistakes which you have seen, and what advice do you have for businesses to avoid or rectify those pitfalls, especially for businesses who cannot afford your services? Otherwise, they could very easily reach out to you, right? Because
Yeah.
there are a lot of small businesses, they do it on their own. They do not really have the budget for marketing agency, or even businesses wherein you have seen that they have their online presence, they have a team doing it, be it their in-house team, or let's say have the marketing agencies doing it for them. But there are some common mistakes which you see still happening or still there. So what do you reckon these are?
I could probably list loads of them and spend hours listing them, but I'd say one of the most common areas that we're seeing quite a lot of the same issues cropping up recently is sites that are quite heavily reliant on JavaScript, particularly when it comes to rendering content, especially if they're like using client-side rendering, or they're relying on a lot of JavaScript to dynamically inject content, for example, or to control their internal linking. And I think that can lead to a lot of issues with content or pages not being indexed properly, and then obviously not being ranked as a result. So I think advice to anyone whose site was JavaScript heavy, I think where possible, if you can get someone who's an expert on board, that's ideal. But where possible, using server-side rendering, making sure that any critical content and elements like links are accessible in the HTML rather than being injected via JavaScript, where possible, should help to avoid any kind of major issues there. I think one of the other areas where we tend to often see quite a lot of big mistakes happen is website migrations. So
Hmm.
If a site's launching a new website or a redesign, unless you've got someone who knows SEO involved in the process, this nearly always leads to SEO issues. So whether that's a huge loss in traffic if it's not done properly or a loss in revenue, I think it really does need a proper process to be followed to make sure that SEO is considered properly. So things like preserving important content, ensuring that important pages are correctly redirected, things like that, really critical to success when migrating a website. So I would say those probably are the two major areas where we see issues. I think my biggest piece of
Hmm.
advice generally to businesses would be, if you can, have an SEO involved as early as you can in the process of any sort of SEO campaign, and ideally on an ongoing basis. But obviously, that's going to depend on budget and whether you've got in-house resource. So yeah, whether that's someone in-house that solely manages that activity or as part of your wider digital marketing scope, whether that's an agency or a freelancer to fulfill that function. I think there's nothing better really than consulting with an expert to make sure you get it right first time. But I guess if you don't have the budget for that, then trying to learn as much as you can. There's so many brilliant free resources online to learn digital. So trying to learn as much as you can to help inform that process, because I think doing it without the knowledge is where things can go wrong.
Come on, give your email ID. After seeing all of that.
People can find me on LinkedIn if they want.
I was just kidding. All right. Catherine, thank you for stating that out the way it is, right? And while I know understand that we are not really pitching our services, but it is always good to at least get an audit sort of thing done so that even if you want to do the implementation, execution, whatever, yourself in-house team, but it is always, there's no harm in getting an opinion of the
Mhm.
experts in terms of in which direction should you be starting out, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I think we do work with some clients in that on that basis as well, where we might do an audit and then give them recommendations to go and implement. I think
right.
there's definitely a middle ground sometimes when it comes to like lower budget accounts. Yeah,
True.
there's definitely opportunities.
Absolutely. And then as we witness, Catherine, the ongoing evolution of search algorithm and then so much of innovations coming in our industry, what specific advancements have you recently incorporated into your SEO strategies that might be considered cutting edge within the industry?
Sure, yeah. I think it's been a really interesting and quite chaotic time to be working in SEO,
Mhm.
actually. I think the last half
True.
of 2023 was probably one of the most volatile times I've seen over the 11 years of
Right.
being in the industry. I think the amount of algorithm updates we saw, the volatility of the SERP, and just general fluctuation in rankings off the back of those, it was definitely
Mhm.
chaotic. Obviously, we've also got the impending rollout of Google Search Generative Experience as well, which may or may not roll out this year. Obviously, in the UK, we've still not seen the beta launch yet, so it'll be interesting to see how that progresses over the next year. But I think with so much going on, it can sometimes feel like it's quite hard to keep up with all of those updates, just to start with. But in terms of advancements we've incorporated recently, I think there's been quite a lot of increased talk in the industry around entities and entity SEO, which we know in itself is not really a new or cutting edge topic, as entities have been around as a thing for kind of at least 10 years. But what we've recently seen quite a lot of success with is from incorporating an entity focused strategy for some of our clients, where we look at improving the brand as a whole, but also then ensuring that core pages and entities are mapped with structured data in place as well to tie that piece together. So we'll typically start with looking at the brand entity and brand presence with an aim to improve the brand presence overall, help clients to show up more often in searches, looking at things like improving EEAT as well, so looking at authority and trust. So we'll audit their existing brand entities, identify what needs to be done to make that better or make that brand presence stronger, which could also include things like improving brand reputation, updating, consolidating existing brand profiles that they might have out there. I guess a general brand improvement strategy, which ties into then the SEO. And then we'll also then work on mapping out the entities for core pages on the site and ensuring that we've got strong internal linking in place, and then write our bespoke structured data to go on top of that. So obviously we don't know yet how much like search generative experience in the future of SEO will use entities, but I think we've seen a lot of success from strengthening those connections between brand and what the site is relevant for. And I think putting those connections together in the knowledge graph certainly can't hurt when it comes to sort of generative AI. So we've seen some great initial results off the back of that, and it's one of our main sort of strategies at the moment.
All right, great. And then we were also hit by this AI storm December last year now, right? What is your take generally? Exciting times for sure. Everyone adopted AI or included it in their strategies. So how do you guys went through that initial phase, and how did you adopt AI at Sleeping Giant? And what do you think? Where are we headed with AI and machine learning?
Really interesting, very broad question. I think for us, when it comes to adoption of AI, it's all about testing really and looking at the different tools and things that are out there because there's been so much that's been released over the last year. It's working out through all of that noise, sort of what are the most important parts to take from that and how can we use it to make our processes more efficient. I think definitely our approach has been that AI doesn't replace human insights. And I think that's the
Very
key.
true.
It's like using it to support processes rather than to completely replace processes. So that's generally how we'll use AI. So, for example, things like keyword clustering, when we're doing keyword research, we might use it for idea generation, but not, for example, for writing full pieces of content, because I don't think that it can add that level of like human experience and like authenticity that a human actually writing that content can do. So I think there's definitely a balance. AI is definitely going to be really useful, I think, to us moving forward, particularly as things get more advanced, but definitely still requires that human element.
Yeah, absolutely. Very valid point. It gives you a head start for sure, rather than starting everything from scratch. But yes, it is not yet a final deliverable product the way I say it. It's still not a deliverable product, be it content or anything else. It still has to have that human element at the end of it. You might put it as editing, auditing, whatever. But it still has to be done. The humanization part of it is still there. It has reduced, yes, it increases our efficiency. Yes, it's still not there to replace us for sure, the way
Yeah.
I look at it. So, because the content that is being, from a content perspective, the content which is being put online on a site to trigger the decision making to purchase a product or service, again, it is being consumed by a human at the end of the day to make that, to trigger that decision making of purchasing a product or service, yes or no. So that human element at the other side of the table in terms of creating that content is still very much there. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think as well, Google's been putting a lot of emphasis on that around obviously they
Yeah.
brought experience into EEAT. There's been a lot of focus around like hidden gems in the most recent updates. They're pushing those like user focused and user like getting the information from users as opposed to getting the information from machines. So I think there's definitely going to be an element of that ongoing in content
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, which brings to my next question, Kathy. In your experience, how do you leverage user generated questions to shape your content strategy? And are there any specific content optimization practices that align with answering user queries effectively?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think in line with what I just said, actually, the hidden gems and that the user generated content is definitely a hot topic at the moment. I think where Google did bring in that additional focus on experience and added value for users, I think that's going to be the key for the future of content marketing in general and how we should be thinking about shaping content moving forward. And we obviously know that AI chat features as well, like SGE, are naturally more question and answer focused as well. So I think a
Hmm.
great way to be getting ahead of that is to make sure we've got that content on the site that
On
answers
the
the
side,
questions
yeah.
users might be searching for. So I think a great way of doing that would be to start collating sort of FAQs that people might have about products and services. So whether that's through doing keyword research or reviewing forums or groups where the client's audience present, even maybe surveying current or prospective customers to understand what their pain points are, what questions they might have, for example, and then ensuring that the site answers those questions as best as possible, ideally with some of that added EAT in there as well to help increase the authority and the relevance. That could be in the form of a short, succinct answer. It could be in the form of a long form piece of content. It really depends on the site, the niche, what the question itself might be. But I guess making
Mhm.
sure that the sites are surfacing that information in a way that makes the most sense and that answers it in the best way for users is probably what to aim for.
Absolutely. And then talking about SEO campaigns, measuring the success or a failure of a SEO campaign, we all set our own KPIs and stuff. But yeah, from your perspective, if you can share some insights in terms of few not so traditional KPIs which you look at to measure the success or a failure of a campaign, and then how do you find those insightful in your process?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, we have our data and insights function at the agency. So we've got that real focus on delivering data driven insights as part of our core service. We'll typically do some workshopping with clients as an initial stage to understand the broader business goals. And we'll work collaboratively with the clients to understand what the best KPIs are for them to provide the insights on the goals that they have. I think when it comes to more non-traditional KPIs, or I guess the metrics or the data that sits outside of your usual like sessions, clicks, revenue, I think one of the really important things to look at for SEO specifically is to assess trends and the impact of external factors. So whether that's looking more broadly at market analysis or industry data, you could, for example, be doing all the right things for SEO, but if the market overall is in decline, for example, that may
Mhm.
reflect in your SEO performance, and it may mean that actually you need to pivot your strategy to do something else or consider other channels. Similarly, if you can see from the trends that the industry's booming, but your SEO performance is perhaps not reflecting that growth, it might indicate that you maybe need to change something up in your strategy. So I think it's really important to have a look at trends and make sure you're aware of what's on in the market for the client or site in particular. I think also, where possible, reviewing performance holistically is really important. So not just looking at the channel in isolation. So even if you're just focusing on SEO, having a look at what's going on elsewhere within the digital marketing mix is really important, as often just looking at
Mhm.
the one channel in isolation doesn't tell the whole story. So having reports or templates that allow you to look at all channels and how those are working together is often the best way for us of demonstrating ROI.
Lovely. And Catherine, before we wrap this up and move on to the next part, actually, I wanted to ask you, yours is quite a journey from initially not knowing about SEO to getting into SEO, now heading SEO, right? So, what is that advice you'd want to give to our listeners who are trying to make a career in SEO, who are starting out, or let's say in some phase of their career where they're confused about taking that next step, going up the ladder? You have climbed the ladder, right? So, what is the advice you'd want to give to our listeners today who are trying to make a mark in the space?
Mhm. For sure. Yeah, I think my advice would be to try and learn as much as you can, consume as much as information as you can, whether that's through watching podcasts or reading articles or attending industry events. There's some great events, particularly in the UK, like Brighton SEO is one. I actually spoke
Yeah.
at SEO in April last year. It's a brilliant event to attend. You get so much insight from attending events. Also, try to join communities if possible. So, one I'm part of is the Women in Tech SEO community, and it's a great way of networking with other people in the industry. And again, you can learn so much when you talk to others who also work in the space. So, those would be my bits of advice.
Great. Catherine, thank you so much for doing this with us. But yeah, before we let you go, I'd like to play a quick rapid fire with you. I hope you're game for it.
I'll give it a go. Always hate being put on the spot, but I'll try.
Okay. Your last Google search.
Oh gosh, it was
That's an easy one.
last Google search. I don't know. It would have been something client related, but off the top of my head, I can't think. It was probably something related to like AI or SGE or something.
Okay. All right. What did you do with your first paycheck, Catherine? First paycheck of your life?
First paycheck of my life. Oh, I think I bought a laptop with it. Yeah, it was a laptop.
Oh, that must be a good one then.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Moving on. Let's say if we were to make a movie on you, Catherine. Okay. What genre would it be?
What genre would it be? Probably oh, that's a really good question actually. Maybe genre.
SEO was easy for you. So,
Yeah, SEO easy. If you ask me SEO questions, I could talk about SEO all day. Movie genre, let's go with a thriller just because I enjoy thrillers. Not that my
okay.
life is particularly thrilling, but there you go.
All right. And where do we find you on Friday evenings, Catherine? Post office, post work. Where do we find you?
You'll find me probably cooking something nice because I enjoy food, enjoy cooking, and I find that's a good way to switch off after the week.
All right. Not really any further, Catherine. You have been a sport. Thank you so much for taking out time and doing this with us. I'm sure the insights which you have shared would really benefit our audiences, our listeners. So really appreciate you taking out time and doing this.
Oh, no problem at all. It's been great to chat to you. Thanks so much for inviting me.